Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us here on SABC News. Of course, we continue with coverage throughout the country of what's currently happening, whether it is the protests, those who are in support of the former president, and indeed has now become looting and some criminality that is involved there too. We are going to talk more on this, and we're joined via Zoom by political analyst Levy Ndou to unpack the role of political parties and branches in claiming the violence that has been going on in South Africa since last week. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Ndou. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for giving us your time.
Good afternoon to you, Flo. Good afternoon to the viewers at home.
It seems that police are now quite overwhelmed with some of the protests that are currently taking place. These protests started as a small group in front of the home of the former president. He has since, of course, then been arrested. And one asked the question, and I think it's a question I actually posed on social media, as to, was there no plan? I mean, one should have seen that, something is happening here. And the police shouldn't be in a position where they're now sort of overwhelmed. When it started, what should the role of, let's say, your community leaders and other political party leaders have been during that time when the protest did in fact start?
Well, Flo, I think one is not surprised that we have got the unrest taking place now, because even months before former President Zuma could be arrested, there were clear indications that you dare arrest former President Zuma, something is actually going to happen. But also, I think you're very correct when you say the police are quite overwhelmed. For me, I think it indicates poor planning on the part of the police and the intelligence services of the Republic. But specifically, if one is to go to your question, the people that are busy looting, who are participating in criminal activities, are found in the wards, are found in the branches of political organizations. And I think political parties, leaders at different sectors, have got a role to play. And in the main, they should be able, as political parties, be able to provide basics in terms of how the government functions. And for me, all this, I'll put the blame on the political parties and their leaders, because what is actually happening now requires the leaders themselves to be able to persuade people, to be able to be in charge of their communities, and also provide information that will not make people to be involved in this type of activities. People that are getting arrested now, some of them might not be aware exactly of what is going on. But what then becomes the role of the leaders is to ensure that people get conscientized about their rights and the implications of exercising their rights in a manner that they infringe on the rights of other citizens.
Yeah. Mr. Ndou, where do you stand on the issue of the deployment of the army? Of course, we got the news, earlier on that the South African National Defence Force will be deployed around Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal to assist law enforcement agencies. Where do you stand on this issue? A lot of people saying that this is now becoming something that it shouldn't have indeed been, and it shouldn't have gotten necessarily to those points. And some arguing that the SNDF or the soldiers should not, in fact, then be deployed. Where do you stand on this particular issue?
Flo, firstly, I know you'll agree with me, and a lot of other people would say that there is instability in some parts of KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. Would also agree that these activities has a potential to damage the economy, which is on its knees, and the consequences might be very much severe.
Yeah.
We also agree that the police are not in charge of the situation. And everybody would also agree that because the police don't seem to be able to deal with the situation, reinforcement is necessary. And for me, if we want to see this violence spreading to other parts of the Republic, we'll then have to fold our arms and leave it to the police, who clearly cannot do anything. So I think based on the information that is gathered and having assessed the situation, then obviously responsible people in the security cluster must then provide guidance to government, whether government has to deploy the soldiers or not. And I think in this instance, they've been provided with guidance that they actually have to deploy the soldiers. Because in either way, if you don't deploy the soldiers, the situation is going to be worse. And if you deploy the soldiers, then there's a possibility for stability. Yesterday only, the indication was that in KwaZulu-Natal, the cost was almost 100 million. So if we want to move towards a billion or more other money, then we just have to leave the situation as it is. And I think a responsible government has to act and act now.
I mean, what are you expecting, Mr. Ndou, this later on today? We don't have a time at this point, but of course we just got news in that President Cyril Ramaphosa will indeed be addressing the nation tonight on how to handle the situation. How can the government really play this at the point that it is right now before, and I don't even know if the situation can get any worse than it already is, but one wonders how can the president at this point, what message can he give or say at this time to try and quell, what's currently happening? And we can see that there's a lot of anger. There's other issues that are connected, which, initially we had been hearing that these protests are about freeing President Jacob Zuma. But it seems that there's more now. It's spiraled into other issues and other things that people are angry about. And I wonder what the president, in his role as leader of the nation, then should be saying in terms of how to handle this situation going forward.
We need leadership. It is time now for the leadership of Ramaphosa to come onto the fore and provide leadership that is needed in South Africa. Ramaphosa, I think, has done much well by allowing the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal to deal with the situation in KwaZulu-Natal. The KwaZulu-Natal government has been unable to deal with the situation. Now it is time for the presidency to provide leadership. What I expect from the president is for him to use this opportunity to provide context onto these matters. Maybe to provide legal education about the relationship between the executive, parliament, and the judiciary. Citizens of South Africa mostly don't seem to know that in a system that we have, the constitutional democracy, the executive does not interfere in the affairs of the judiciary. And I think it's important that when we emphasize rights, which is what most government officials do, we must emphasize the rights of citizens, but also teach them about the implications when you exercise your rights whilst infringing on other people's rights. But I also need him to be able to exercise his authority as the President of the Republic to ensure that what is actually happening now has to stop. And I also expect the police officers of the Republic of South Africa to be able to do their work, because that is exactly what they are paid for. They must actually be able to protect the citizens, and they must also be able to protect the South African property.
Mr. Levy Ndou, as always, we appreciate your time here on SABC News. Thank you for speaking to us and giving us your input. No doubt we'll have a conversation at some point.